it's very, very early is the main message, right? So, which I think is really cool because it's in early communities, there's a ton of energy. Like there's a lot of discovery, and people are around the clock trying to figure things out, and it's fun. For if you're a tinkerer, then it's a lot of fun. And to me, it reminds me a lot about the early days of Bitcoin. And I'm sure for the NFT guys who were around early on when like CryptoPunks and stuff like that started, I'm sure they would find some similarity to that too.
Welcome back, everybody, to Altcoin Daily. What the hell are Bitcoin NFTs, Bitcoin Ordinals? We're at the ground floor for whatever this is, and I don't know that much about it. I want to know about it. I want you guys to know about it. So I brought on a resident expert. To me, he's not the creator of Bitcoin Ordinals, but to me, he's one of the experts. You know, I don't know if he defined himself that way, but Udi Wertheimer?
Yeah, Udi Wertheimer. Yeah, it's a difficult name.
Wertheimer. Bitcoin OG in the space. I knew of him back in 2020 at least. He seemed to be Bitcoin maximalish. Since then, he has become almost the Bitcoin maximalist slayer. Udi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Absolutely great. Now that we have NFTs on Bitcoin, I'm just having fun every day.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And for our audience who don't know that much about you, I'd love if you could like introduce yourself, brag a little bit. You know, who are you, Udi?
Yeah, I mean, originally I'm like a software developer by trade, and I somehow accidentally found out about Bitcoin, like, I don't know, probably many years ago. I don't even remember when it was. And like everyone else, got addicted to reading about it 24/7 without sleep, and got all of my friends and colleagues annoyed because I wouldn't stop talking about it. The usual like Bitcoin discovery story, but I was lucky that it was relatively early. Um, yeah, over the years, I did kind of become a Bitcoin maximalist in a lot of ways. I think that a lot of people, well, I mean, I never described myself as one, but I think a lot of people saw me as a Bitcoin maximalist, and I consider myself a Bitcoin maximalist cult survivor these days because I do think it kind of became a cult, and I think it's not great for Bitcoin itself. Like I think Bitcoin deserves a little better than that.
Totally. And most Bitcoiners are cool, but there was a little bit of a culty aspect going on crypto Twitter. Everything you were saying about it in 2021, stuff that I was thinking, was, wish I could say, didn't want to really get involved, but since you had that history with them, you could say it and it did get heard. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's jump right into it, Udi. What are ordinals? I know they're Bitcoin NFTs, but that's all I know. What are ordinals?
Yeah. So, okay, to be very clear, they're very new. I did not invent them in any way, shape, or form. I'm learning about them as I go, just like you guys are. So I'm gonna try to share from my very limited understanding. All I know is that they're like a whole lot of fun. Okay, that's what I know for sure. Everything else could be me being mistaken about the explanation. But in general, so this guy whose name is Casey Rotamore, I believe he's been leading the SF Bitcoin Devs meetup for a long time now, which is a very good meetup. That people come over from all over the country and probably all over the world to attend the talks there. They're considered like probably the best in Bitcoin. And he's been working on a bunch of stuff, but this one thing that really seems to have intrigued him is this idea of turning Bitcoin or turning Sats, like the smallest unit of Bitcoin, the Satoshi, into these sort of NFTs that he called ordinals. And basically, the way it works is the protocol describes a way to tell sats apart, like say this is one sat and this is another sat, and then attach some information to them. Could be text, could be a JPEG, could be really anything. Um, Part of the and then you can send them around just like you could send any Bitcoin around, but the protocol would attach that information to it. So essentially, you're not just sending a little bit of Bitcoin, you're also sending whatever piece of data is attached to it. And part of the very interesting thing about it is that um, it seems like he noticed, and I mean, I don't know if it was him or someone he worked with, but they noticed that Taproot, so the last soft fork to Bitcoin, actually removed some of the size limits on Bitcoin transactions, or more specifically on Bitcoin scripts. So Bitcoin transactions have scripts attached to them. We don't have to go into the details of what exactly those are, but they were usually limited in the size that they could be, and Taproot actually removed most of those limits. So suddenly you can make transactions that are really large and attach a lot of information to those transactions. Uh, One cool thing that we did was taking the Taproot wizard behind me in the background, and we blew it up to a 4 MB size, and we filled an entire block with a single transaction that had this JPEG image attached to it, which I thought was really cool. Some people weren't as amused apparently, but I thought it was really cool. And so those are the kind of things you can do. You can actually put the actual image file on the Bitcoin blockchain. It actually right now is probably cheaper than most people would expect it to be. And I think in many ways, though, it makes them actually superior to NFTs that you'll find on other ecosystems, because on Ethereum, for example, if you wanted to have the data, the actual file, the actual image file attached on the blockchain, it would be extremely expensive to do. It is a lot more reasonable on Bitcoin right now. Maybe because Bitcoin blocks are usually relatively empty, and it seems like the only people right now who are trying to use Bitcoin block space extensively are people who are using ordinals. Um, so there's just not a lot of competition right now for storing data on chain. So it's, at least for now, it is relatively cheap. And the nice thing about it, this is gonna be there forever, and um, the handy Bitcoin full node operators are going to help distribute those JPEG files for all of time. So that's a very nice side effect. Um, so yeah, that's kind of, I guess, on one foot, kind of what those mean.
So Satoshis by themselves are fungible. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. But because you
Right.
write something on them, that's what makes them non-fungible.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could think of it like taking a note of dollars and signing your name on it. And if you're a famous person, then maybe that dollar bill will become more valuable. It will become less fungible, but more valuable because it has your signature on it. So similarly, you would take a SAT or UTXO and you would sign on it, or you would maybe add some data to it, and then maybe it becomes more valuable if people see value in that. So yeah.
Do you see this as the next big thing, or just like a viable side industry, or next to Ethereum NFTs, other blockchain NFTs, or is this just like a fun thing you're doing to stick it to those Bitcoin maximalists?
I think that NFTs are really all about art and culture, right? Like if you look at the technological aspect of how those things work, I wouldn't say, not on Ethereum and not on Bitcoin, not on other chain, I wouldn't say there's some technological breakthrough marvel, at least not in my opinion. But the cultural aspect of those images and those signatures, or whatever you want to call them, being available on this platform that a lot of people have a lot of emotion tied to it, right? Like a lot of people think of Bitcoin very dearly. A lot of other people think of Ethereum very dearly, and it's a very, very serious thing for them, and it holds a lot of meaning. And I think combining that with art has the ability to create a lot of emotion that can be valuable for a lot of people. It's really, like any piece of art, it's really about kind of storytelling and what that story means to certain people. So I think a lot of people will not find that interesting at all, and that's fine. And I think a lot of other people will.
When you talk about the fact that ordinals are basically receipts on individual Satoshis on the Bitcoin blockchain, as I understand it, since block one, Chancellor on the brink, you could always put something into the Bitcoin blockchain that's there forever. So is the innovation here with Taproot that all of a sudden you can put more things?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. So it's true. You always could add information, both to transactions individually and also to blocks. Um, I believe that that first message that you're referring to, I believe it was attached to the block and not to a specific transaction. But maybe I'm wrong. Actually, I'm not sure about that. But either way, yeah, you always could do that, but there were limits on the amount of information you could include in a transaction. Um, Historically, people used to try to do that by attaching information to an opcode that was called opreturn. Opcodes are a component of Bitcoin scripts, and you could always use scripts in a relatively liberal way. So you could have a script that would have a certain amount of information in it. I believe that the current limit to that was around 80 bytes. I don't remember the exact number, but it was low. There were actually a lot of debates about that in the past, about specific that trick of using up return in order to add information into the blockchain, and those limits were actually reduced in order to make it more difficult to add like random data or arbitrary data to transactions. And yeah, what happened with Taproot is that they created a new way to add information to transactions that is pretty much unlimited. As we showed with this transaction that was a 4 MB transaction, the only limit that really exists is the limit on the size of blocks. So because the block is limited to a maximum 4 MB, that's as much as we could fit in a transaction. But really, that's the only limit that there is.
And again, you made history the other day by having the biggest, what was it?
Yeah, so it was the biggest Bitcoin transaction and biggest block of all time. Yeah. I believe the previous record was held by a 1 MB transaction, and this one was 4 MB. The 1 MB one was in 2015, if I remember correctly.
How did you do that? Did you have to know somebody who runs a meme pool or?
So, yeah. So the way that this works is there isn't a limit in the Bitcoin protocol to the size of transactions, but there is a limit in Bitcoin core to the size of transactions that nodes would propagate to each other. What I mean by that is if a node receives a transaction that is not confirmed in a block yet, right? Like someone tries to send a transaction, the transaction is not yet confirmed. It sits in the memory pool of a node, and then that node would not send it to other nodes if it is larger than 400 kilobytes. Okay, so 0.4 megabytes. That is the limit that is in place. So that means you will not be able to have that transaction reach a mining pool because no node would propagate it further to the pools. So yeah, you have to contact the mining pool directly and work with them in order to put the large transaction into a block. Otherwise, you just couldn't do it because it would never reach them.
How do you see ordinals evolving 5-10 years down the line? And I ask because right now the block space is available because the primary use case for Bitcoin is storing value, holding it, not moving it. If this thing catches on, then it's going to get way more expensive.
Right. So I think that what I used to believe, and I think what a lot of Bitcoin sort of enthusiasts seem to believe, is that the Bitcoin is going to be so valuable, and transacting Bitcoin is going to be so desirable that the Bitcoin transaction fees, as in real Bitcoin transactions that move Bitcoin value, are going to be more valuable than anything else, and therefore they will outcompete any other use of the blockchain. So, if we want to send like monkey JPEGs to each other, it will simply not be worthwhile enough for us to pay the Bitcoin on-chain fees and compete with people who are using Bitcoin for actual Bitcoin transactions, right? I don't know. So I hope that makes sense. And that's not necessarily what I believe, but it's what a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts seem to believe. And that's definitely possible. I mean, it could happen. another thing that could happen though, and that's I think something that has some people worried, is that people might not choose to transact Bitcoin on chain. Maybe because they're going to use off-chain alternatives like Lightning. Maybe because they're going to use, centralized exchanges and banks and whatnot. Maybe because they just wouldn't be very interested in transacting Bitcoin. I don't know. It's hard to predict the future, right? Um, and in that case, yeah, you could see maybe JPEG transactions would be more popular. That's definitely what's happening now. So what you can see right now, that's kind of, I would say that's pretty much inarguable. Right now, in the last week or two, definitely in the last few days, it is very clear that there's a relatively big group of people who are really enthusiastic about those JPEGs, about those ordinals, and they are very happy to pay relatively higher fees in order to get them moving. While we are not seeing a lot of normal Bitcoin transactions, and the ones that we do see are not very interested in paying very high fees. So yeah, right now it seems like the JPEG use case is kind of pricing out the rest. I don't know if it's going to stay like that, but we'll find out. I think it's a very interesting experiment.
And then in 2021, as NFTs were popping off, obviously it was Ethereum NFTs. Everybody was interested. People from the outside world were interested in NFTs. You had the Bitcoin maximalists saying, hey, we had NFTs on Bitcoin. We had Rare Pepes. It's like, yeah, Brad Mills, we know you have a Rare Pepe, but like, I don't understand like the difference. So Rare Pepes and Brad Mills, friend of the channel, Bitcoin maximalist. Like, what's the difference between like a Rare Pepe, the NFTs that were original on Bitcoin versus these?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I mean, NFTs would you could probably, I mean, say that they were invented by Bitcoiners on Bitcoin using a protocol that was called Counterparty. I mean, it still exists. You can still use it, and it's mostly used for things like Rare Pepes. I think there was a card game that they used to use that too. I forgot the name of it. Anyways, yeah, those exist. The There are many like on the technical level, there are many differences between them. Ordinals is a new protocol and it's implemented in technically very different ways. But I would say that the main difference for end users is that ordinals just allow for way, way more information to be stored. So the counterparty protocol was very, very limited in the amount of data that could be used. So obviously, the Rare Pepes, the images for them are not stored on chain; they're stored on some third-party server, and the NFTs are kind of just like very similar to how they work in Ethereum. The NFTs just point to a URL on this external server. And what's unique about Ordinals is you can use what they call inscriptions, which means putting the actual image or whatever data you want on chain and have it stored there forever. And that way, they're more decentralized.
What's your project? It's Taproot Wizards. Is that a collection?
So, the Wizards, or what the Wizards are, I can't speak for them.
How many are there?
But
10,000?
At this point in time, there are 3 Wizards in existence. So there's the 4 MB Wizard behind me. There's a Rainbow Taproot Wizard that is in possession of Eric Wall right now. And just today, we discovered a new wizard that is the Rising Star Taproot Wizard, which belongs to Nick Carter. It seems like there are new wizards appearing every day, so I would not be shocked if there would be more. But that's all I know.
So I don't understand. One, you can relate this to the Taproot Wizards, but just generally, how do I know if I need an Ethereum NFT? I can buy it on the open market. I can mint it. I know how to do that. But with a Bitcoin Ordinals NFT, you need to run a Bitcoin full node, I believe. How do I get involved in Bitcoin Ordinals generally? And then I guess also, I don't understand. How do I get a wizard?
Right. So, I mean, in order to get a wizard, you'd have to find someone to sell you the wizard. As I said, there are 3 in existence right now. One is mine behind me. I'm not selling this one, like the 4 MB one. This stays with me forever. There are 2 others. You can talk to Eric and Nick. Maybe they'll, maybe they'll sell you theirs. If other wizard appear, then maybe you could get your hands on one of those. But I don't know. I can't. It's out of my control. Really, they do whatever they want. So those wizards
generally,
generally for ordinals, So they it's very, very early is the main message, right? So which I think is really cool because it's in early communities there's a ton of energy. Like there's a lot of discovery and people are around the clock trying to figure things out, and it's fun. For if you're a tinkerer, then it's a lot of fun. And to me, it reminds me a lot about the early days of Bitcoin, and I'm sure for the NFT guys who were around early on when like CryptoPunks and stuff like that started, I'm sure they would find some similarity to that too, because the tools are not non-existent, and if you want to use those, it's very, very clunky. So yeah, the main way to issue and or send, receive, buy, sell ordinals would be to get a Bitcoin full node. On top of that, you would attach the ord software, ord software, which would go through your node. It would index all of the ordinal transactions from your node and create that index that your computer can use, and it would allow you to send and receive transactions. um, and it's a little clunky right now. I would expect though, because there's so much energy about those and there's so much activity around those, I would expect that it would probably see easier to use wallets sooner rather than later. That maybe would not require you to set up a full node, maybe they would not require you to do all of those steps. I would expect that would probably happen relatively quick.
And the reason that you think that this is going to gain traction, because right now, like what, maybe 100 people in the whole world are doing this because half of the Bitcoiners don't even want this, or maybe 1,000 people, who knows? But like you're saying, this, you think it's going to gain traction. In brief, like, is the main thing that these are going to compete with Ethereum because you can put it actually on chain?
Right. I think the two main differences are, one, you can put the image actually on chain and it will remain there forever in a very decentralized manner. You don't have to trust anyone for that. So that's one big benefit. And the other benefit, I think there's a lot more people than might be obvious that are really interested in Bitcoin specifically as a chain to use NFTs on. I think that like I think NFT collectors in general, sure, some of them are maybe Ethereum Maxis and they only want to do Ethereum stuff, but it seems to me that the most of them are a lot more interested in culture than they are in technology. And I think that a lot of them, that's the early kind of signaling that I'm seeing from people. I've seen actually more interest into the Taproot Wizards and into Ordinals in general from Ethereum NFT collectors than from Bitcoin people, because um, I think a lot of people see the value in Bitcoin as this original OG chain that has a lot of like cultural significance attached to it, which was previously just not really possible to unlock. And now that there's all this energy into it, I think that a lot of people are seeing the value in having this um, collectible that is not just, you're not just collecting Bitcoins, you're collecting something that you can show to other people on the OG Bitcoin chain. I think that a lot of people are going to see some value in that.
So, like, some hardcore Bitcoiners, some Bitcoin maximalists are against this. They want Bitcoin only to be used as a store of value and money. And this is something that, they would say bloats the chain, creates, just random transactions. Now, a good thing about this maybe is that this will develop Bitcoin's fee market. This will get people using the chain. But are there any potential negatives you see for ordinals now all of a sudden being a part of Bitcoin's network?
And the only negative I can see is if people choose not to use those, and if they flop, then that would be, maybe a little bit of a waste of time. But other than that, that's the worst thing that I can see that happens. Like people dedicate some time to it and it doesn't work out. But other than that, no, I really don't understand what the big deal is. I think that there's a group that is very loud, but is actually pretty small, that seems to think that they, for some reason, own the Bitcoin chain, or they have some particular say about how people use it. And the truth is, they don't. It doesn't really matter what they think. They can be mad if they want. They can I mean, it just doesn't matter. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. Like you can use it however you want. I personally find it kind of funny, like we know for a fact that, um, we know for a fact that North Korea has been using Bitcoin in order to launder some money, and I didn't see a lot of Bitcoin maximalists being like, not on my node. I will not have that on my full node. No way. I do not want to waste space on my hard drive for that. I mean, we know for a fact that people are using this for, I don't even want to name the horrible things that people are, because Bitcoin is a tool, right? Like it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And some people use it for bad. The fact that those group of angry boomer maximalists have decided that the absolute worst use case in existence for Bitcoin right now is that people use JPEG is insane to me. Like there's obviously worse things going on right now on a daily basis. And so there's absolutely no way that the Taproot Wizard is the worst thing that's happening on Bitcoin right now and has to be stopped for the first priority. It's absolutely ridiculous to me, but it's okay. I mean, that's the nice thing. Anyone can have any opinion that they want about activity on the Bitcoin network. They only really have two choices. They either, pay up, pay higher fees to get their precious transactions in instead of mine, or they can whine on Twitter. Those are those are the only two choices that they have. If they wish to pay up, I think that would be great. I think that would be a great win for Bitcoin, and I think everyone would be happy.
I have one or two final questions. Austin, you have something you want to ask?
You know what? I want you to go. I feel like I've learned so much more from this interview from when we started that I'm still processing.
Austin didn't care about Bitcoin ordinals when we started, but now I feel like he cares a little bit.
He doxed me.
All right, this is speaking of the toxic Bitcoin maximalist culture. And again, most Bitcoiners are cool. There's just this kind of toxic culture that's been present since you started really calling it out in 2020 and 2021. My question is, has toxic Bitcoin maximalist culture gotten better in your opinion over the years and since 2020, 2021? And what is one thing you think the toxic Bitcoin maximalist culture could still improve?
Yeah, I think maybe the most important point to press on is what you started with. Most Bitcoiners are really cool people, really cool people. They're, they're energetic. They help each other. They help new people that they've never heard of. They like to have fun too. Unfortunately, it seems like there's this small group that's so loud, and it just gives a bad name to what Bitcoiners are. That's just unfortunate. Um, if did things improve? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that things improved a lot. I think that the one thing that I'm kind of optimistic about is that I'm seeing a lot more people kind of speaking out now and saying, you know what, I'm a Bitcoiner, but I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, and I don't see myself as part of that group, and the group does not represent me. So I'm seeing a lot more of that now than I did 2 years ago. So that makes me very hopeful that things can kind of change and improve. Um, the people who consider themselves toxic Bitcoin maximalists, that's how they define themselves. I do not have many hopes for their improvement. Like it is a cult, and cults don't usually, cult members don't usually like change their minds. That's what makes them a cult. I don't think we're going to convince them. I think that's very unlikely. What I'm more optimistic about is that we can hopefully drown out their voices at least a little bit. I mean, I think there's still definitely room for kind of a diehard sector in the Bitcoin community. I think there's value in having that. I think there's definitely in times like the big block debate and the block size wars of 2017. I think they served an important role, and I think we want to have them on our side, but we don't want them to be the representative voice of Bitcoin. And I think we don't want the rest of the crypto community and the rest of the world to look at Bitcoin and just see a bunch of angry boomers yelling at the sky from their homes. I think that's just not a good image for Bitcoin, and I'm optimistic that we can improve that image. We still need them. The boomers are valuable, but they shouldn't be the torchbearers of Bitcoin.
Yeah, at the very least, we need a dialogue going. We need to hear
Yeah,
all of these opinions.
yeah, that's what I would say.
Udi, my second from last question is on ordinals and the wizards specifically. Final thoughts on ordinals. Anything we didn't ask you want to talk about, or just final thoughts on ordinals and wizards?
Yeah, I would really recommend people to try them out, especially if you haven't tried Bitcoin recently. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised by the community around this. That, mind you, started within only a few weeks. But I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised about about how welcoming it is, and two, just about how much fun and unexplored fun is to be had there. Just the experiment of putting those images and really anything it is on chain. It's nothing like what you have on your other chains. I really do recommend you try it. Not not only despite of it being clunky, but because it is clunky, I think you'll enjoy it. So that's the main thing. Um, and yeah, I think it's a cool experiment. I think it pushes the boundaries on a lot of kind of faiths and beliefs in the Bitcoin community, and I think it will help sort out, what's real and what's kind of made up, and I think it'll be fun.
And then actually, real quick before my final question, like there is no ordinals marketplace as far as I know. Like what I've seen like rocks, just like Ethereum had rocks. I've seen ordinal rocks, literally just a rock, but they did well in Ethereum, and I guess they're an original ordinals collection on Bitcoin, one of the earliest. What are the projects out there? We're so early. Like, not that you're like
Yeah.
endorsing them, but just what are the projects?
Yeah, so definitely this is not an endorsement. I don't actually own any of those myself, and I don't know them very well. But as you mentioned, there's the Bitcoin rocks that seem to be doing extremely well actually right now. They're selling for amazing prices. There's the I think there are two like punk derivative projects. I think there's one called Bitcoin Punks and there's another called Ordinal Punks, if I recall correctly. I think they're not the same one, but they're both kind of interesting. There's a bunch of newer ones that I don't even remember the name, but there's a couple new collections popping up every day. I've had my DMs, you know, completely popping with people like, hey, you should check out this one. So there's like new ones all the time. There's the Ordinals Discord, like the Discord for the actual protocol that there's a bunch of trading going there. So I think that if people are interested in like actually getting their hands on some of those, and that's a good place to start. Um, and of course, there's the Taproot Wizards Discord, and I absolutely recommend that people join. Again, I have nothing to do with them; they just appeared. But it's on taprootwizards.com. You can definitely find, I think, maybe the largest Ordinal community actually at this point. So
Cool. Thank you so much for coming on today, Udi. Links to Udi's personal Twitter below, links to a couple of things we mentioned below. Certainly, at the very least, go follow him on Twitter. I do. I love it. He has a great Twitter account. People say that we have a good Twitter account, but I think Udi really has a great Twitter account. And then, Udi, we talked about just Ordinal specifically, but final thoughts for this coming crypto market. Are you still as bullish on Bitcoin as ever? I assume yes. How do you think Bitcoin versus Ethereum? Do you think things are better nowadays? What are your thoughts for this coming crypto market?
yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very long-term bullish on Bitcoin, and I haven't made up my mind yet if this is a full-blown recovery or if it's just a small pump to make us feel better. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But one thing I know for sure is that Bitcoin is better than Ethereum. So I do know that. But yeah, I'm joking. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I'm never good at price prediction, so I've given up on that.
Are you more bullish on Ethereum today than you were in 2020?
Um, Probably not. No. Probably not. You know, I mean, I used to be bullish on Ethereum in 2015 or whatever. But
Good
I
call
feel
by
like
you.
yeah, I think it's maybe a little overvalued now. But compared to Bitcoin, at least, that's the way I see it. But who knows? I've always thought that. So,
Guys, roast Udi in the comments. Udi, you promised to
yep.
look at all the top comments. All right, Udi, we'll see your comments. Thank you so much for coming on today, Udi. You're the man. Guys, smash that like button, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.